Hello. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. I'll try and keep you awake after lunch. I could tell you jokes, but anyway. What is blockchain and how does it apply to supply chain? We've been involved with blockchain for 12 months now. We got into it accidentally. It wasn't a company that started out as blockchain saying this would be really cool and how do we make money at it? We started out as a data platform for aggregating data from multiple different sources on drilling rigs. Just happens that that's actually a really good starting point for blockchain. This presentation, I apologize for you who are experts. It starts out really basic about what is blockchain, and then it gets a little bit more complicated quite quickly. And I'm going to start a timer so that I don't get beaten up by the NFL guy, because he's a lot bigger than me, and I haven't played rugby for years, so. All right. So, sounds like a strange place to start. Double entry bookkeeping has been around for a long time, but it enabled us all to do business with each other because it allowed you to keep track of both sides of a transaction, which meant that you actually knew the impact of your business when you bought or sold something. So it's been around for a long time, and guess what? We still use it today. It's how business is done today, and we keep track of it in our ERP systems, right? We keep it in SAP, JD Edwards, QuickBooks, Oracle, whatever it is you use. The problem is that there's many versions of truth, right? So I do a transaction with one of you guys, and each of us keeps track of that transaction in our own books. And then 30 days later, when we decide to invoice each other, we probably don't agree with each other, and then we get into a discussion about who owes how much money. So it's the basic problem that blockchain solves. Somebody said this morning that the success of blockchain is going to be based on financial transactions, and I agree with that in general. So the good thing about blockchain, there is only one version of the truth. So if you can collect data from a place and you can put it into a smart contract, so those of you who don't understand what a smart contract is, it is here. It's a computer protocol designed to automate the performance of a contract. So when people think of smart contracts, quite often what happens is the lawyer in the room says, well, wait a minute, you can't put my whole contract on blockchain, and then you start to get into a big debate with the lawyers about how much of the contract is actually going to be put into the smart contract. All the smart contract is the execution terms of the contract. So if I deliver a ton of sand to you, and you have agreed to pay me a dollar, then when I deliver a ton of sand, you give me $1. If I have a contract with you that when the sun rises tomorrow, I'll pay you $10, and when it sets tomorrow, the opposite will happen, then we put that into a smart contract. That's all it is. It's very simple. So you can get as complicated as you want, and you can start talking about cryptographic hashes and cryptocurrencies and all kinds of gubbins, but at the end of the day, it is just a transaction. And it's just like a transaction in a general ledger. We just have agreed the terms in advance, and if we can electronically measure, and this is a key, if you can electronically measure it and you can put it into a smart contract, then all the blocks that everybody calculates need to be identical. They're going to be based off the same algorithm, the same data, so everybody has got an exact same copy of the transaction. And then that can be put into the ERP systems, whichever system it is, and there's one version of truth that we're all operating from. So now you don't have a different version in your ERP system than I do, and guess what? That can happen daily, it can happen hourly, it can happen monthly, it can happen on any kind of time frame you want. It doesn't have to happen every 15 seconds, and it doesn't have to rely on mining or anything else like that. So what does Data Gumbo do? We provide a blockchain as a service platform, so you guys don't have to figure it out. If you want to experiment with blockchain this afternoon, give me a call. We'll set up a ledger for you. You can be in the blockchain business. If you have a software company you'd like to include blockchain in your product, give me a call. We'll license it to you. We'll white label it to you. If you want to be a consulting company, you want to set up a blockchain business, we'll train you about blockchain. You can provide blockchain as a consulting practice. So you take all the rubbish out of the blockchain discussion and you say, okay, it's really not about the blockchain. It's about how do you do business process change and what kind of transactions can we enable because you're using blockchain. I'm going to skip this, but this is an idea of the architecture of how it all works. The data comes from the left-hand side, goes through a smart contract. You create a daily block. Each of the participants, so it's a private network. Do not use a public network if you're doing any kind of commerce with any kind of major corporation. You'll get in trouble. And then as long as you've got consensus across the different blocks, then you have a valid transaction and you're in business. So what I've got here is I've got two use cases. Actually, I've got two specific use cases, and I've got a general discussion of the use cases we've been asked to study or have developed solutions for over the last 12 months by companies. So what this is a study that we did for a major operator in the Gulf of Mexico. I've taken out specifics of it because it's confidential information. However, I think it's interesting. So if you don't know anything about the supply boats in the Gulf of Mexico, each of the major operators in the Gulf hires a boat company to supply vessels that deliver people, supplies, anything else to the platforms and rigs drilling in the Gulf. The red spots are likely to be drilling platforms, so you've got boats going around and around and around doing donuts around a drilling platform in case something goes badly wrong. The yellow obviously depicts the amount of traffic going to these places. The interesting thing is that each operator, each oil company, has their own agreement with a boat company. And they go sailing straight past the competitor's company and waves at them as they go by saying, how you doing? And they're not, and if their boat is empty, guess what? There's money being wasted all over the place. So the question is can we save money? Is there a better way of doing it? And the answer is yes. And the next question is, why hasn't it been achieved? The simple answer is because of lack of trust between the different participants. So who gets paid how much for how much utilization of the boats, and how do you divide that up? And how do you ensure that the right people get paid the right amount of money? So it seems like a good use case for blockchain. And by the way, I had a conversation earlier on. It's actually pretty funny. We get called all the time saying, we need to do something blockchainish. Can you help us? The answer is 75% of the time, no. You've already got a solution. Why the heck aren't you using it? You've already got a billing system. Use the billing system. You've already got an ERP system. Use the ERP system. Not everything is a blockchain. Blockchain is not the answer to everything. But this is a good example. You've got multiple counterparties. They don't necessarily trust each other to bill appropriately, and there's a lot of money at stake. So we looked at 3 different scenarios. I'm just going to go through this. So scenario 1 is you can just sell excess capacity as you go past on the milk run. We left the drilling platforms out because if a drilling rig goes down, guess what? It costs $600,000. Actually, not today. It costs $400,000 a day. So you don't want to be on the hook for that downtime. So we just looked at the platforms. So they're operating platforms, they're not drilling rigs. Scenario 2 is you say, okay, you take some days and I'll take other days, and we'll split the cost. So we looked at scenario 3, which is loop services. They commit to a vessel company or 2, and then you basically set up a bus service. And then you bill based on how much people use. And the general idea is that you can save about 30% of your cost of your offshore vessel sharing. And if you're paying $50 million a year, that's interesting money. So we are in the process of kicking off or negotiating 3 different pilots for that right now. So that's the first specific use case that we believe is interesting. I don't know if you can read this slide. Hopefully you can. But this is the kind of the master plan, if you like, of all the different scenarios we've seen over the last 12 months. I can tell you how we got started in blockchain. I told you we started as a data platform. We were talking to a major operator and a major contractor in the Gulf of Mexico about doing benchmarking of drilling performance. And the operator made a statement to the drilling contractor that pissed the drilling contractor off. The contractor left the room, and I thought that was the end of Data Gumbo and the end of the opportunity and the end of the world. So that was a bad day in the life of Andrew Bruce. But there was an interesting statement made during that meeting, is that if you, I'm going to get outside supply chain for a minute and into drilling. If you drill a hole in the ground called a well, you have to connect together 90 pieces of pipe. And if you, each time you connect that piece of pipe to another piece of pipe, it takes on average about 6 minutes. And if you can reduce the time it takes to connect all those pieces of pipe together across this major operator's business for a year, that could save them $250 million a year. And that's one KPI on a rig, and there's at least 40 different KPIs in the rig. So then the question is, why on earth aren't they going after that $250 million? And the answer was, well, we don't trust, no, sorry, the answer is they can't get the contractor to work with them. So then you go to the contractor and say, hey guys, why aren't you going after this $250 million, which this oil company is prepared to share with you? It says, because we don't trust that we will get paid the bonus. The oil company is famous, as a generalization to all the oil companies in here. Oil companies have a reputation for enforcing penalties and not necessarily paying the bonus. So how do you put together an infrastructure which will allow both sides to realize a share of that $250 million? There's this thing called blockchain. Maybe that would work. So we proposed that as a solution, and that's what got us kicked off. So how do you agree on a source of data? How do you agree on the terms of a performance contract in advance, put the infrastructure in place, and allow them both to start making a significant amount of money, one saving and one making a significant amount of money? So that's how we got started with performance contracts. And I stood up in a conference like this about last August and talked about that, and everybody came up to me and said, why the heck are you talking about performance contracts? Why not just talk about contract execution, period? Because if I've got a contract with you to deliver a ton of sand and I deliver a ton of sand, pay me today, now. And I will give you a discount on the price of sand, and my accounts receivable goes to a DPO days. My receivable days goes down to 0. I don't need to sit around it. So the example given specifically was the contractor brings sand, this piece of paper is signed in triplicate by the company man. That piece of paper is touched 6 times within the company, and then it is paid 90 days later if that piece of paper hasn't blown out the truck window when it's driving down the road. True story. So if we can get the guy to sign an iPad because he's obviously authorized to sign for that sand, why don't we just make a payment? And so there's people talking to us. In fact, it's the most common use case we get asked about is, can't we just automate our contract payment? So that's performance contracts and contract execution. Document origin tracking is a really interesting one. We were asked by an oil company saying, look, big piece of equipment gets delivered to us, and we want to know where the steel came from. We want to know where the data book is. What happens today is there have been a whole bunch of layoffs. The equipment provider provides a data book, which is about this thick. They shove it in a drawer and forget about it, and nobody knows where it is. Now, if you want to know anything about that piece of equipment, good luck. So they want to put the data book. They want to put the provenance of the steel. They want to put the manufacturing process. They want to put the service records. They want to put the spare parts list, everything onto a block, so that then they can now start searching for interesting data about that piece of equipment anytime between now and whenever the thing dies. And also now you've got a complete record of that piece of equipment if you ever need to sell it again. Resource sharing, we've already talked about that. That's the supply vessels, so vessels in the Gulf. and also helicopters or any other expensive things like cranes if you're building a refinery or something like that. Single window is something that was brought to us about, and it's part of the reason I'm here today, is because of how, if a vessel comes from international waters into territorial waters, how do you track all the governmental reporting, the EPA, the customs, the immigration, all the governmental reporting. Then once the ship's in port, how do you track what's actually happening to that ship? Is it at anchor? Is it on the dock? Who's paying for how much? Et cetera, et cetera. I think you guys all understand that use case. So we're looking at that. And then the last one is logistics. That's the big elephant that's on the bottom of the slide. We've been talking to some operators, and there's at least 15 different major use cases. So it could be haulage of wastewater. So you get water coming from a well site, and you need to know who, you need to figure out how many contaminants are in that water. You need to figure out how you divide the contaminants up between the different suppliers. I mean, the joint interest partners. You need to figure out how you pay the various fines, if there are any, or costs to the government. The same thing with fuel, the same thing with, okay, now I'm trying to ship a piece of equipment from the other side of the world to the other side of the world. That's multimodal, it's multi-geography. How do you keep track of all the expenses across all those different modes of transport and all those different people? I could keep on going forever on that, but I think you guys get the idea. And this is a sneak peek. So we signed a contract last week, which will be public in June. It's a major drilling contractor in the Gulf of Mexico. And what they want to do, so this is an example of us white labeling our blockchain to another company. They want to provide blockchain as a service to their company, their customers. So they're a drilling contractor, they want to provide blockchain as a solution to their customers such as BP, Shell, Chevron, etc. So what they want to do is they want to say, what is the total progress against the AFE and against physical execution for a well, for all the participants in drilling a well? So let's say there's 70 people or 70 companies who are drilling a well. How do I know who's on first? In other words, how do you have a dynamic critical chain so you can see who's holding the ball? How do you know whether you're ahead or behind according to plan, both physically and financially? How does everybody involved in the whole chain have visibility of only their piece of the blockchain? Everybody participates in the whole blockchain who is part of the well, this particular well, but only the people who are, so let's say I've got Frank's casing. Frank's casing should be able to see the parts of the chain that Frank's casing is involved in, not the whole chain, because it's confidential, obviously. So it's a private chain, and how do you provide visibility across the delivery of a whole asset? So this could be a well, but you can easily imagine this being a refinery or something else that's been built. A complex supply chain of services and parts being delivered to deliver a huge project. So look in the press in the middle of next month, and you should see an announcement about this. And that's all I had. Hopefully I've caught us up a little bit. You got any questions? Victor's not allowed to ask any questions.
Yeah. I'm just curious about these are very interesting solutions that you're showing. I think you said this one, your customer, I guess, is going to kind of operate as a service for their clients.
Yes.
What can you describe the business models that you're seeing so that we can understand who gets these kinds of projects off the ground?
Sure. Yeah. So in this case, they are offering it as a service, actually a free service to their customers, and we are being paid a fee for use of the platform. So we provide a blockchain as a service, and our business model is that we get paid a fee for the use of, so basically a per transaction fee, a minimal one. I mean, our whole business model, just to make it clear, is we believe that blockchain is going to be kind of like a utility. It's kind of like the internet. It's kind of like a utility. We've heard the comments already today. If you turn the water on the tap in the house, it's up to you what kind of washing machine or dishwasher you have, but water should come out. So we're trying to position blockchain as a utility that people in the industry can use between all the different people they normally do business with. Yes, sir.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
This is a really cool platform we're working on. I was wondering how and who set up the nodes for the blockchain to work, and how do you incentivize your clients per se to get them to run them?
Good question. Thank you. So I think there's 3 different answers to your question. So let me try answering all 3 of them. Number one is, if somebody wants to set up a new node, they can either host the node themselves or we can host it for them. It's blockchain as a service. So we can either host it or they can host it themselves. If there is no business case, why would anybody use it? I mean, to me, I think it's the acid test, right? I mean, why would you do this? Why would you do a blockchain implementation if there's not a lot of money at stake? So in this case, this company believes that they can differentiate themselves from their competition by having a blockchain service. They also believe that they can save their customers a heck of a lot of money, and I agree with them. So if we go back to this slide right here, the performance contracts, I think that's fairly obvious. The operators get to save money, and the drilling contractors get to share in the savings. The contract execution, quite frankly, they're looking at, first of all, what's the time value of money, and if you can reduce the receivables days down to 0, what's that worth? But second of all, you get rid of all the disputes and the legal issues. So basically, in a nutshell, it's that if there's no business case, people aren't going to do it, and that's the incentive. Am I out? I'm out. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.